Little Johnny was in a job interview at Best Buy. He was sitting there with the manager, and the manager said, "You're doing a great job so far, but I've got one last thing." He takes his laptop, he pushes it across the table, and he says, "All right, little Johnny, I want you to sell this to me." Little Johnny looks at him, picks up the laptop, and walks out the door. About an hour later, the guy calls little Johnny on the phone. He says, "I need you to bring that laptop back to me right now." Little Johnny says, "Okay, $350 and it's yours." One day, little Johnny had to go to the bathroom real bad, so he goes running in there, and his grandma's taking a shower. He points down between her legs. He says, "What is that?" She says, "That's my beaver." He says, "Okay," and he goes to the bathroom and runs out of there and doesn't think anything of it. The next day, he has to go to the bathroom again real bad, and so he goes running in there, and his mom's taking a shower. He points down between his mom's legs and says, "Mom, that's your beaver." She says, "Yeah, how do you know that?" He says, "Well, because Grandma has one too, but I think it's dead because it's got its tongue hanging out." Little Johnny and little Susie grew up together and got married. Little Johnny became a concrete finisher. One day, he called up his boss. He's feeling sick. He says, "I can't come in." His boss says, "Little Johnny, what do you mean you can't come in? I told this couple that we'd have their driveway finished 2 days ago." He says, "I'm sorry." His boss says, "All right, you know what I do when I'm feeling sick in the morning? I go have sex with my wife. Why don't you try that?" Little Johnny says, "All right, I'll try anything." So about an hour later, little Johnny calls him back, and he says, "You know what, boss? I did what you told me to, and I feel great. And by the way, this is a really nice house you have." So it's summer vacation, and little Johnny needs to make a little bit of extra money. So he goes to the richer neighborhoods and starts knocking on doors, and he goes and knocks on the first door, and this guy answers. Little Johnny says, "Hey, I'm a handyman. Is there anything that you need done around your house? I'm trying to make some extra money." The guy says, "Well, yeah, you can paint my porch." Johnny says, "All right, that sounds good." The guy says, "How much do you charge?" He says, "I don't know, $50. So the guy says, "Great, we've got some paint, some supplies in the shed. Go ahead and go grab it." Johnny says, "All right," and closes the door, and his wife says, "Does he know that our porch goes all the way around our house?" The guy says, "He must. He was standing on it." So about a half hour later, little Johnny comes back, and he says, "Hey, I'm here to collect my $50. He says, "I've got some paint left over, and by the way, that's a Ferrari, not a Porsche." Hey, John, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
So little Johnny and little Susie have their first child, and the baby has red hair. And little Johnny and little Susie have black hair. Little Johnny goes to the doc. He says, "Doc, you got to help me out." He says, "This baby has red hair. We have jet black hair. And our family has had black hair for years." The doctor says, "No, that's impossible. You must have had someone in your ancestry that has had red hair." He says, "I don't think so." The doctor says, "All right, little Johnny, how often have you had sex lately?" He says, "I've been working a lot, and I probably only have it like once or twice a month." The doctor says, "I got it. It's rust." Little Johnny's teacher says, "Okay, class, today I'm going to describe jobs to you, and you're going to tell me what they are." So the first one is someone who builds houses. Little Susie raises her hand. She says, "A carpenter." Teacher says, "That's correct, little Susie." She says, "The next one is someone who makes cakes and pies for a living." Little Billy raises his hand. He says, "A baker." Teacher says, "Yeah, that's correct." She says, "The next one is someone who works on cars and fixes the motors." Little Timmy raises his hand. He says, "A mechanic." Teacher says, "That's correct." The fourth one is someone who keeps talking and going on when people are no longer interested. Little Johnny raises his hand. He says, "A teacher." So little Johnny's going to his 20-year class reunion, and he has to dress up in costume. So he thinks about it for a little bit, and he takes a glass jar and puts it right over the top of his pecker. So he goes on down, and he's wearing nothing else but that. And one of his old classmates comes up and says, "Well, what are you supposed to be?" He says, "I'm a fireman." He says, "Yeah, but you have a glass jar over the top of your pecker, and that's it." He says, "Yeah, I know. In case of emergency, break jar, pull on knob, and I'll come as fast as I can." One day, little Johnny walks into the police station and says, "I need to speak to the lieutenant." The guy says, "It's your lucky day. That's who I am." Little Johnny says, "I want a job." Lieutenant says, "Okay. What's 4 times 4? Little Johnny says, 16. He says, "Okay. What's the square root of 100? Little Johnny says, 10. He says, "All right, that's good." Lieutenant says, who killed Abraham Lincoln? Little Johnny says, I don't know. He says, okay, well, you can go home and think about it and get back to me. Little Johnny says, all right, I'll find out by tomorrow. Little Johnny leaves and calls up one of his buddies, and his buddy says, well, did you get the job? He says, yeah, not only did I get the job, the lieutenant's got me working on a murder case. Hey, John, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
An elderly little Johnny goes to confession, and he says, Father, I'm 80 years old, I'm married, and I have 11 grandchildren. And this past week, I started taking this Viagra pill, and last night, I had an affair with two 18-year-old girls, and I made love to both of them twice. The priest says, okay, when's the last time you were in confession? He says, never, I'm Jewish. He says, then why are you telling me? He says, I'm 80 years old and I'm having sex, so I'm telling everybody. Hey, John, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
Teacher says, little Johnny, I got a riddle for you. When does success come before work? Little Johnny says, that's easy. When you're taking a poop on company time. She says, well, the correct answer is in a dictionary. But I like the way you're thinking. Little Johnny says, okay, Teach, I got one for you. You like to put your finger in me. You play with me when you're bored. And the best man always has me first. What am I? Teacher says, little Johnny, you go to the principal's office. He says, why? I'm a wedding ring. But I like the way you're thinking. Growing up, Johnny had always wanted to be a firefighter. Well, when he was old enough, he finally got that job, and he came home and told his wife how excited he was. And he says, all right, from here on out, if we're ever going to make love, he says, I'm going to yell Bay 1, and we're going to rip off all our clothes. When I yell Bay 2, that means we're going to hop on the bed, and when I yell Bay 3, we're going to go at it. So after his first day of work, he comes home, and he's standing there at the door, and he tells his wife, he says, Bay 1. She stripped off her clothes. He said, Bay 2. They both hopped on the bed. He said, Bay 3. And they started going at it. They're going at it for about 5 minutes, and she starts screaming, Bay 4, Bay 4, Bay 4. He says, what do you mean? What's Bay 4? She said, Bay 4 means needs more hose. You ain't even close to the fire.
One day, little Johnny had to use the bathroom while his mom was in the shower. He looked down between her legs and said, what's that? She said, that's my washcloth. He didn't think nothing of it, and he ran away and went and played. About a week later, he comes running into the bathroom again, and she had shaved her crotch, and he said, Mama, what happened to your washcloth? She goes, oh, I lost it. He didn't think nothing of it, and he ran away and went and played. About a week later, his mom was making dinner in the kitchen. When Johnny comes running in, he says, Mama, I found your washcloth. The babysitter was using it to wash Daddy's face.
So little Johnny gets this brand new BMW, and he's driving it all around, and next thing you know, the thing breaks down. Well, luckily, he's right in front of a mechanic shop, and he kind of rolls on in there. He goes inside and lets the guys know what's going on, and one of the mechanics come out, and within about 5 minutes, he has it idling pretty. Well, Johnny looks over and he says, well, what's happening? What'd you do? He says, nothing, just a little crap in the carburetor. Johnny says, oh, really? Well, how often do I have to do that? A long, long time ago, little Johnny and little Susie lived on a farm, and their bull died. And all they had was $200 to get a new one. So little Johnny says, all right, little Susie, I'm going to go into town, and I'm going to find a bull for less than $200, and then I'll send you a telegraph to come with the trailer to pick it up. So she says, all right, sounds good. So little Johnny goes into town. He finds a bull for $199. So he goes to do the telegraph, and the guy says, it's $1 a word. He says, well, I only have $1. He says, all right, choose your word wisely. Johnny thinks about it, and he says, okay, use the word comfortable. He says, well, what's that going to do? He says, well, she's a blonde, so she'll read it as comfortable. Little Johnny was in college, and he ended up having a girl over, and, they kind of fooled around, and one thing led to another, and you know what happened. Well, afterwards, they're laying there in bed, and she proceeds to rub on his balls for like an hour and a half, which he really enjoyed. But he leaned over and said, that's awesome, but why do you like doing that? She goes, oh, I really enjoy it. He says, well, why? She said, because I miss mine. There was this girl that had turned 21, and she had some very small breasts, so she decided she was going to get some plastic surgery. So she went and saw Dr. Wong, and Dr. Wong said, well, before we do this, try this out. Go home, and every day when you wake up, I want you to rub on your breasts and say, Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, I want bigger boobies. Well, she thought that was kind of weird, but she went home and tried it. And after 2 weeks, they were the perfect size. Well, one day she was getting ready for work and she was late, so she was running for the bus, and she gets on the bus and goes to the back, and she realized that she forgot to do her morning ritual. So right there, she just went, Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, I want bigger boobies. Well, little Johnny looked over and he says, you went to Dr. Wong, didn't you? She smiles. He says, well, yes, how do you know? Little Johnny said, hickory-dickory-dock.